Trump now faces Comey's moral assault. Washington, CNN, James Comey, anointing himself as America's moral conscience, called on the nation to recognize that Donald Trump's actions add up to an immoral, malignant presidency that insults core democratic values. Comey set up an unprecedented public challenge from someone of his stature to a sitting commander-in-chief, framing the most penetrating critique of Trump's White House yet from an establishment figure. The foundation of this country is in jeopardy when we stop measuring our leaders against that central value of the truth, Comey said in an exclusive interview with ABC News chief anchor George Stephanopoulos. His indictment came at the start of a media blitz to promote his book A Higher Loyalty, publishing Tuesday 11 months after he was fired. The action sparked claims the president was trying to obstruct justice over the Russia probe and led to the appointment of a special counsel. The former FBI director's appearance threw into focus questions that will be at play over the next 10 days. Which version of events will Americans find most credible, that of the former FBI director or the man who fired him? Will Comey's healthy sense of his own ego and place in history serve to alienate any undecided Americans rather than convince them of his arguments about Trump? And ultimately, will there be a political price to pay for the president? The media buzz around the interview and its Washington reverberations could also carry consequences. The New York Times published a full-page op-ed reminding the president he's not above the law, a reminder of how real fears of a systemic political crisis in the event Trump attempts to fire special counsel Robert Mueller or Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who is overseeing his probe. Another issue is whether Comey's critique about the president can penetrate the permanent storm that whirls around Trump and fundamentally reshape already polarized opinion about the president's behavior. A recent ABC News poll showed that Americans found Comey more believable than Trump, by a margin of 48% to 32%. If the fierce campaign by Trump world to discredit the former FBI director's book fails to shift that number, it could suggest that the president is in for lasting political damage. But it's not as if Comey's view of the president represents a sudden shock to the electorate. For example, his descriptions of a president prone to lying are borne out by the facts of the last 15 months. The picture he paints of an almost feudal patriarchy presided over by Trump appears to be validated by the way the president casually fires aides on Twitter and undermines his top aides. Still, most criticisms of the president by elites like Comey merely serve to solidify the views of his supporters that he is being unfairly maligned. Comey called for a national moment of reflection, in which everybody, regardless of partisan views, to evaluate the president and to consider whether he presents a threat to America itself. The simplicity of that challenge seemed an attempt to cut through the chaos, recriminations, wild mood swings and political meltdowns of the last 15 months, in which perspective has often been the victim of the next outrage. Comey discounted previous theories by some Trump critics that the president is incapable or not mentally up to the job, arguing that what he sees as an ego-driven presidency based on lies, demands for loyalty from subordinates and calculated deceit is no accident. He strikes me as a person of above-average intelligence who's tracking conversations and knows what's going on. I don't think he's medically unfit to be president. I think he's morally unfit to be president, Comey said. A person who sees moral equivalence in Charlottesville, who talks about and treats women like they're pieces of meat, who lies constantly about matters big and small and insists the American people believe it, that person's not fit to be president of the United States, on moral grounds, Comey said. Comey stressed that he was not making a political point, saying he did not care what people thought about hot-button issues like guns or immigration. There's something more important than that should unite all of us, and that is our president must embody respect and adhere to the values that are at the core of this country. The most important being truth, he said. This president is not able to do that. He is morally unfit to be president. Source edition.cnn.com